aflevering 23 van de Uppelot podcast. Mijn naam is Nicky Steenkist.
En mijn naam is Dennis Lozane en vandaag spreken wij met de bedenkster van Halloween Horror Nights. Ja, zo, dus vandaag in onze uitzending hebben we echt een hele speciale gast. We zijn super blij dat ze voor ons even tijd heeft willen maken. En het gaaf is dat deze vrouw, het is een Amerikaanse vrouw. En dit is misschien wel de godmother van de moderne Universal Halloween. En misschien wel van de Haloween-events. En we gaan ook overschakelen op het Engels. Dus voor de mensen die geen Engels spreken, sorry. Maar we gaan het toch even doen. Dus, so without further ado, I would like to introduce the godmother of the modern day Halloween events, Miss Julie Zimmerman.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much. Hello from Orlando, Florida. Hello.
Yes, welcome to our show, Julie. And very, very glad to have you.
Yeah, welcome. And just to start off, what's the first thing you can remember about the first time you visited a Universal theme park?
Well, I was in Hollywood. When I moved to Los Angeles, I was born in Ohio. I moved to LA when I was 20. So I was probably 24 years old when Universal theme park there has been around forever. So I just thought it's so interesting because in that one, you actually take a tram tour and they take you to the actual lower lot where they shoot all the television and movies. So I thought it was pretty amazing, actually. And I liked the Western Stunt Show. That's what I remember the most about my first time there.
A true classic.
It's great. But I thought it was awesome and some of it's hokey. In Hollywood, they do weird things like the parting of the Red Sea. But it's still, I thought it was very cool because you actually got to see shooting that was happening on the lot. And I love that.
And then, of course, several years later, you're going to start your career at Universal Creative. How did you start at Universal? What was the starting point of how did you get involved with Universal Creative?
It's a funny story. I left Los Angeles at one point to go to Northern California because show business was wearing on me. I was at that point doing comedy and different things. And the more I kind of moved up the food chain, as I call it, the more I just didn't like the business. I didn't like show business. So I went away for 3 years and I lived north of San Francisco. And I saw an ad in the San Francisco Chronicle for not even theme park. It said entertainment professional. So I sent a resume in. And months later, I got a phone call and it was a gentleman who said, "Hi, I'm so-and-so from Universal Studios." And I said, "No, this is not Universal Studios calling because the ad didn't say Universal." And he goes, "No, I really am calling, and we wanted to know if you'd come for an interview." And I said, "If you send me a ticket, I'll go." Thinking again, I thought it was just kind of a hoax. And I got a ticket, and the gentleman who I spoke with, named Peter Alexander, lived up in that area of Northern California.
It's a name we all know.
The first thing he said to me was, "Why would you leave Paradise to come back to LA?" And I knew I had the job. So I started as his assistant. I started at the bottom. And basically, through Peter and other people I met, I just moved up into the position that I eventually ended up. So it was really, call it fate, call it kismet, call it just luck. But, it was still amazing to me that he out of everybody that applied, that I got it simply because where I lived at the time.
And as an assistant, what type of work did you do back in the days?
Well, I did all his mail. I did all his emails. I answered all the phones. I would go to meetings with him, and my boss was very much, he would include me in a lot. So I read everything that came in, which was really wonderful for me because that way I was exposed to a lot. And so I went to the meetings with Steven Spielberg with him. And, it was like I was surrounded. When your boss is way up as a vice president, you meet everybody, and everybody talks to you because they know they have to be nice to you to get to him. So, I was exposed to, people would come visit John Landis, Danny Aykroyd, Bill Murray, everybody who was part of when they were putting together Florida. So they would all come to where I was. So, I had a great job because I was in on the bottom, but I got to meet everybody, and then I moved up from there.
Yeah, how cool! Because like Peter Alexander, we mention him a lot on our show because he is like the main character. He's one of the guys who started it with all the attractions and the rides. he's such a phenomenal. Well,
And he's
I wouldn't
a
want
nice
to word,
man.
I wouldn't want to use the term Imagineer, but how do you call them at Universal?
You and here?
Yeah,
He worked for Disney. I think everybody.
A cinemagician.
He was really. He's very nice. I mean, I love Peter, and funny as hell. You know, I mean, he's funny. He has wit, and most of the time he held himself together in his job. But he had a good time, and that's what I think made a difference for me working with him. That Peter didn't take himself too seriously, but he also put together a really good team of producers. And he's a gem. And he would just sit there, you know, I'd go in and he'd have his hands behind his back and his feet off the desk. And he'd say, let's go to the mall today. He did. Let's go to the lot today and go look for Columbo's car. I mean, that's the kind of guy he was. So, yeah, he's a really great guy.
And can you name some of the projects you worked on with him?
I worked on, in the beginning, I worked on Murder, She Wrote post-production, which was in the theme park, Alfred Hitchcock, The Art of Making Movies, and the Animal Actors Show. That's in the beginning. And then when I got to Florida after that, they opened, I worked on Five Goes West, which was another stage show. And then after that, and I rewrote, hi honey, my dog is here. They redid Ghostbusters at one point in Florida, and I did that. But then eventually I moved into kind of a lull in what I was doing, and I ended up, you know, doing it was Fright Nights for Universal back in 1991. So
because that's the main topic for today, and
yes.
The main question that's on our mind the whole time is, how did you guys How did you came up with the Fright Nights idea? Because Universal wasn't the first to do a Halloween event. There were more parties,
they weren't.
but Universal made basically the perfect world-leading Halloween event, but it all started in 1991 with Fright Nights.
Yeah, it was Jay Stein, another one that if you look into the history of Universal Florida, you'll see the name Jay Stein, and he was sort of the architect of Universal Florida. He wanted this theme park. Jay loved horror films, and as you recall Universal's history, horror films were, you know, what saved the studio. I mean, it's in the 20s and 30s, it was the original horror films, your Draculas and Frankensteins, but in the 50s, a lot of horror films came out of there. And he wanted to build an attraction at Universal Studios Hollywood, and they said no. And they did have a Halloween there quite a few years before our Halloween, and their Halloween took off again. But there was a death, yes, I said a death, on the tram, because they used the tram tour and someone, you know, didn't listen to directions and basically fell off the tram. So it was like a big kibosh on, we're not going to do this. And yet Jay wanted to do it in Florida. And they, at the time, Universal struggling because the theme park didn't open well. You know, you've read the history. It was a hit or miss.
Yes.
And he convinced them, don't ask me how, but he was the head guy. He said, I want to do this thing around Halloween. And it was really interesting because it was sort of, I don't want to use the term thrown together, but I want to use the term thrown together because it was sort of like all of a sudden they're going to do this, you know, and I'm walking between trailers because I was out promoting Five Goes West, the film, and Tim Scipielli came up to me and he goes, gosh, I really need help on this Halloween thing. And I said, okay. And that's how it started. It was very small the first year. The Dungeon of Terror was really a dream of Tim Scipielli and a gentleman named Joel House. And then what I brought to the table was bringing in the live stage show with Beetlejuice, which eventually became a stage show at Universal. And basically, I put together all the crazy, you know, we had a lot of kind of circus acts. We had sword swallowers and fire swallowers and crazy stuff. We had a whole thing across Hollywood Boulevard that was based a little bit loosely on the movie Thunderdome from Mad Max. And so I came in to sort of put all the pieces together because it was, you know, a kind of a mess because you have to interact with all the departments at Universal, and that I knew how to do from my previous experience. And then the next year, we didn't know what was going to go on. The thing was highly successful. You know, it was like $12.95 to get in for one thing.
Yeah, because the first edition was 2 or 3 nights only. It was
3.
3 nights, so it was a very, very limited event, basically.
Very limited. They didn't know how much money to throw at it. You know, the honest truth was they wanted to test the markets because Universal and Disney are very different. So
yeah, we know that.
That's day and night. You know, you're going from pixie dust to hell on the water, basically. I always said they drink juice over there, and at Universal we drink beer.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
that's the truth, So they thought, well, let's see if we have a market for it.
Yeah, because the mouse already claimed Halloween, Christmas. Sorry, the mouse already claimed Christmas.
That's their event. We can't play with them. You can't play with bippity boppity boop when it comes to Christmas. A little bit. What they've got Mickey Mouse, we have the Terminator.
Yeah. That's so true.
The truth. So they wanted to test the market. They wanted a marquee event in Florida, basically, and they didn't know. We got some sponsorship from Pepsi to help pay for things, and it was unbelievable the amount of people that came. They were flabbergasted by it. The lines for Dungeon of Terror would be 3 hours long, and it went over so well that they themselves were in shock. They realized it's really great. But the next year, they had to go out and get more funding. Universal has to get, somebody up in the big house has to say, oh, I've got to give it X amount of millions of dollars this time. And so I was hanging out, and they asked me, what would you do for the next one? And I swear to God, I was on a borrowed Apple computer in a trailer by myself on a little tray table. And I wrote down, okay, I'm going to do this haunted house, people under the stairs. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to do Bill and Ted. And I sent that out to them, to the big kids. Didn't hear from them. And then one day I answered the phone. They said, okay, we're going to do it. I said, going to do what? They said, we're going to do all of what you wrote for them. Honest to God, and I was like, oh my God. So I did call, thank God, people I knew. Tony Pugh, project manager, he was with Creative. Art director John Paul Gertz, I had worked with in the building Universal. I called those two people first. And from there we started to build the team. And off we went, into the wild view yonder. I don't know what I had, maybe $2 million. And nowadays I don't know how many millions they spend.
But did you like horror films yourself, just to get involved in the stories?
I'm curious about that too, because you started at a horror themed event. Did you like horror movies?
Well, I like old movies, and I have a great respect for the early films of the going into the 30s. When you start to talk about black and white pictures, and I love film. I wasn't necessarily a horror queen at that time, no.
But like Boris Karloff's Mummy and...
all those guys. You're looking at the early days of Lon Chaney and what they did. And I had been in the historic soundstage in L.A. where they built, Phantom of the Opera was filmed, the horror film that was silent. So I went in there one day and I was, first of all, I was so amazed that they kept it. And second of all, I was just like picking up the vibe of the stage that so many things have been shot in. So I think when you work in a movie studio like that one with such a history, I was always intrigued by the films itself. And I also, I worked on 2 attractions that were I worked on Alfred Hitchcock, the art of making movies. So that intrigued me even more about learning everything about the man. So I wasn't one of these people who run out and go see Hellraiser or whatever. I basically started with the basics, and then as I began working there on Halloween exclusively, of course, then I saw every horror movie ever made, which I'd watch in my trailer in the daytime because I'm afraid at night. So
I know that. I totally feel you.
Yeah, and I got into Universal history. It was one of those things where it's so fascinating, when Carl Laemmle started this.
Yeah.
California, and I have great respect for how this place was built. So I just ended up, it was like I was in the right place at the right time. That is the understatement of the year. And they all knew me from Fright Nights too. You know what I'm saying? They all knew me. So it was sort of like when it came up that they were going to do this, it was like I was and again, I'm very blessed. I was the first person they came to, and somehow they trusted me. I don't know why, but they did. So,
and that made you the queen of Halloween.
That made me the queen of Halloween, yes.
Because you said earlier, you posted some ideas and basically just said, okay, let's do it. Yeah.
They did.
But did you choose all the IPs and the teams yourself and with the team?
Yes.
Or is there a big brainstorming session company-wide?
No, I chose them, to be honest with you. I did. It was one of those things where, thing about a lot of people together in a room is you're going to get all this stuff all over the place, right? And I worked with John Paul. John Paul Gertz and I are great friends, but we talked about, and I thought about what scenically can I put in a haunted house? That's where I start first with what can we build here scenically from a movie that I can do here that'll actually make sense. It's like a lot of times you see people talk about haunted houses or speculation and they have an idea, but you have to think about how do I go room to room through the experience. And so I did learn that again from working at Universal. So that's where it came from me. I think I had, let me see. Well, my boss said you got to do Robosaurus when he first came to visit, but I really, you know, with the exception of when I started to hire writers for like Bill and Ted as it went along, pretty much I came up with what we were going to do. Honest to God, I wouldn't even lie about it. So I would start researching what really goes on in the tunnels of New York and, you know, built a haunted house on that called the Slaughterhouse. And that's what we did. So for quite a few years, you know, I was the only queen. Came up with creative, you know, I mean, again, you couldn't do this again in a million years. It was God.
I think it's nothing compared to how they do it these days. With
well, they've got more money, you know. And the creative team is all here from Universal Creative. Used to be only in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And so they'd come to build, but you know, it's a different world now with more budgets and, you know, higher up the food chain people. And sure, it's different. You know, they also build twice as many as we did, and you know, it's done differently simply because once you start to throw millions and millions of dollars at it, it changes. And you know, it's just the way life grows. I mean, you look at Universal, how one theme park is now 3 if we count Volcano Bay, and then they're building a new one.
Yeah.
You know, it's a bigger staff, and what I liked about my days there were I loved the people I worked with. They were kind and wonderful and generous. And, you know, we were like a little family. We still are. And I really loved that because I don't believe it's quite like that now. And I was really blessed to be in a very nurturing environment. That's the honest to God truth, with a great boss. And, you know, everybody that I worked with, and we were a really good team.
Yeah, because if we go back to the first house, Dungeon of Terror, it was at the Jaws building. Why did you choose the Jaws building? At the time the attraction broke down?
Well, that thing...
We did a whole show about this history of this ride.
Do you ever want to know the Universal Florida horror stories? Jaws never worked right. They picked the wrong vendor, and so they put this thing in, and they had problems with the one shark that comes out. You know, basically there's the shark that comes out to basically bite the boat, and that thing was never stable. And so they just made that ride wrong, and they opened it up, and they had to have literally divers in the water to make sure the effects were working and different things were happening. But towards the end there, they realized the ride was too dangerous to put people on because it wasn't functioning correctly. So if, you know, let's say you have this huge mechanical shark coming at you and all of a sudden it goes poop. Well, it's going to go poop in your boat. I mean, you're going to have this huge thing. So they drained it and that thing sat there for 2 years trying to figure out what are we going to do with Jaws. And then Intamin, you guys have probably heard of it. Yeah, they build this stuff like E.T. They finally got them to build it. So that building sat for 2 years. The queue line in all of Amity. So we did the queue line. We took over the queue line, which was it was covered, you know, it was very extensive. And basically we built within the queue line the space that we had, which was perfect for us because we had the line, you know, how we could bring people in. But yeah, we built it inside there, which is like taking a blank canvas and putting anything you want in there. And that's why we went to Jaws.
Okay, great.
Ride brakes, use it.
Great use of space. One other question that intrigues me is, like you said, it started with Fright Nights. That was the first event. But year after, and the event as we know it today, that's Halloween Horror Nights.
Yes.
Why did the name change? There's so many stories about what it could be, but I think we should ask the Queen herself.
They got a note, you know, Universal did things, we did things. They always do things that you're not supposed to do, right? And they got a cease and whatever it's order. I can't remember the right word. Cease, not detest, but so if somebody finds out you have their name, or we had a character from The Exorcist in there, we got a letter that said you can't use that. And basically Fright Rights was somebody else's name. Oh. That's exactly what happened. It wasn't anything major. It was just they said you cannot use Fright Nights. And I don't know who came up with Halloween Horror Nights, but that's what happened. They just couldn't use it, and so they changed the name.
Yeah, there are a lot of great stories I heard you mention in other podcasts and interviews. And the one most intriguing for me was the adopt a rat story.
Oh my God.
Could you tell our listeners about that?
Oh, you would love it. Well, we were working out of Fievel's trailer. When our offices were in a trailer in those days that used to be with the Fievel. And so everybody's in this one trailer, right? The characters are getting their makeup done. Where are we going to put the rats? So what do they say? We're going to put the rats in your trailer. And our trailer already had mice, field mice. So I was like, whatever. So they brought in this big cage of rats. And when I'd go to work in the morning, this is what I'd hear. Eek, 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 eek. At 6:00 in the morning, before the lights are on. And so after all our years, we used rats, I think 3 years, we had an adopt a rat program because, what are you going to do with the rats? And the girl who was a rat wrangler loved the rats. So we had adopt a rat program. And every one of those kids got adopted every year.
Because the rats were also stored at earthquake building, right?
Yes, they were. Once we were out of that trailer and we moved somewhere else. We were only there for Fright Nights, and we had nowhere to put the rats. And so, again, all these rats are raised. We got them from Florida. There's places that raise snakes and rats and roaches and.
How many rats are we talking about per event?
60. Because you have to rotate the rats.
Okay.
What happens is that they don't put that many in. What happens is that they get in the coffin with the girl, and if it gets warm in there, these kids will fall asleep, right? So, and they will also go, this is one thing about it, they'd go to like your nose and your mouth because they get thirsty. So they'd be trying to get water out of your mouth. Not a job I want.
No.
But so, again, where do we put the rats? I'm like, oh my God, I can't put them in this. So I thought about it, and I said, we're going to put the rats in back of Earthquake. And they had a panoramic view of a miniature. It was a miniature of how they made Earthquake in one room, and that's where we put the rats in back of it.
So there were rats in the pre-show, but the guests didn't know.
No, they were in the first room. They go in the pre-show. There were none, but in the next room you go into, in back of that huge thing, that's where the kids were kept, as I call it. They had lots of, there was enough room back there for people to get back and forth. They're in the show. That's where we put the kids. I mean, I had to put them somewhere. So I said, well, let's put them. People would look at me. I said, let's just put them in Earthquake. And their eyes were like, what do you mean put them in Earthquake? And then it would be like, I would go, not always, but then I'd go feed the rats, which still scared me. I'm sorry. It just scared me to death. So I dragged myself over there. Like, there's a show going on in front of us. No one can see that I'm back there with those rats. I could have put my arm through and they would have seen me. But so I'm over there feeding these 60 damn rats.
Oh, what a great story.
Oh, it was a riot.
Oh.
And everybody got adopted every year. It was just this big deal. It was just hysterical. I did, we had animals too. We had snakes one year, and we had tarantulas one year, and we had all kinds of things, and they would get loose.
Oh my God.
They would just somehow get out. And there was a tarantula one day on Hollywood Boulevard. And so the operations manager called me and goes, there's a tarantula on Hollywood Boulevard. I'm like, what do you want me to do?
Oh, there's already so many bugs and other things that can bite you, can eat you in Florida. They don't need extra.
Oh, it's hysterical. So we went and got it. And we had a snake that ended up living in the warehouse that we didn't know somehow got packed with everything. So a guy went to work one day in the warehouse, and it's like the 6-foot freaking python came crawling out.
Oh my God.
Yeah, these are great stories, though. They're fun.
One thing I'm also interested in, because
yes.
like I said, Universal was the first big successful Halloween event. They right. set the bar very high, and of course you get copycats along the way. Hey, you get other parks who try to get a piece of the pie. You get parks so mainly domestic, but also overseas, who basically just copy the event.
Sure.
What's your opinion on that? The influence or the copying?
Well, if you're looking, I'm just going to say, if you're looking at the best, which in my opinion, and I've been to different things, I've been to Knott's Berry Farm. I've been to SeaWorld has a thing, but it's not scary. And Mickey has a thing that's not scary. And, you're going to copy. You can't copy, though. It's called money, and if you look at how much money is spent on the various Universal theme parks, you really can't beat that. And so you're not going to be able to do that, and I don't, they're all different. Some of them are just scenically so crappy. That's just my opinion, God. And I don't know. I think the quality of the event is hard to beat. That's just me. Florida's, I think, is the top. Hollywood's is not as impactful because they have to figure out how I can put these houses and stuff into what they have because they can't go on to where they shoot films.
It's very limited spacing there.
Yeah, I don't care if they try to copy. Everybody's going to do what they're going to do, but I don't think on some level you can do it because, you're looking at 10 houses and, 2 live shows and 300 characters and,
6 scare zones, everything. Yeah.
Yeah,
but did you expect that it would be such a big influence on basically the worldwide Halloween market for theme parks and other themed entertainment?
I did not. I thought it was just, not to be lame, but, I was just thinking, I knew people came from all over to see it. But it wasn't until I got contacted for people who had, found me. There was a book written that I wrote a foreword to, and then that they could find me on Facebook, and they were calling me from Ireland and England. And I had no idea it was such a huge, I didn't know it was worldwide. I know they did Halloween in Japan, our Halloween, but I never knew the whole universe, with the exception of the planet, Venus, knew that there was this thing called Halloween Horror Nights Universal. I knew it was popular, and it's really just a few years ago I saw it because this group came and asked me if I would go with them into Halloween, and I was like, my God, people save money to come to Florida, and then one girl goes to every Universal theme park for Halloween every year. That's a lot.
Yeah, we know people from the Netherlands who actually try to visit. This year it's pretty much impossible with the pandemic going on and the travel bans, but who try to go every year from the Netherlands just for Halloween. They need to be in Orlando for Universal. That's how big an impact the event is.
They want to come. I just had no idea. I didn't know the Netherlands was into Halloween either. So next time they come, or if a group comes, just let me know before it, and I'll go in there with them.
Yeah, that was my next story. You only go with groups, or do you go by yourself to Halloween Horror Nights with your family?
Yeah? I still have friends that work there, thank God. And so I call them because the tickets are expensive, and unlike Disney, they don't give you a pass for life when you worked at Universal. So I always call one of my friends, and then I get the good pass, I call it, so I can go in everywhere without waiting in line. But yeah, I had a delightful time, the year before the pandemic with this great group, and they were it was so much fun being with them because they had never, they had saved up to come to Universal, and they were staying at a resort, and it was a grand time for everybody. Plus, I know where every bathroom is in the theme park, so I'm valuable. Yeah.
Oh, great.
I go over there. I love that place. My DNA is in that place. I was there when they were still taking alligators out. So, yeah, I love Universal. No, they were taking alligators out. You guys would have died.
Yeah, basically, yes. Yeah. and I was just wondering, because you did so many different houses, scare zones, the Bill and Ted show, which has become a legend in its own way, basically. But what's your favorite theme you did with Halloween Horror Nights? The favorite thing you did, theme or scare zone house?
What I still like, and they're not there anymore. This is, that what I decided was I wanted to go in the facades, okay? All those were designed by really great Hollywood people. Norm Newberry, these great Hollywood scenic guys designed all those facades, like in New York. Well, inside some of them, as much as there's not a flooring and different things, there's still it's a building in there. So you can go in one door and go out another door. So my big thing was I want to use the facades. I want to make it be that and not make something fake. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so absolutely.
If you go down Sting Alley and there's a big place called Zimmerman's, and if you open that door, there's this huge amount of space. So I wanted to do that because I felt I could create the story better.
That's in the New York street sets.
Right. Yeah. And we went in there, and you'd go one door and you'd come out another door in another alley. And to me, that was awesome because I didn't have to build something. I didn't have to use a sound stage, and you walked into something that was real. And that was my big thing. I tried to use as many times as I could anything that existed that was what I call like really living the movies. So that was that was one of my things about that thing. And I think the other thing I did that was smart, I'm not to pat my back, was to use those existing arenas like the Western Stunt Show for Bill and Ted. I think Bill and Ted is that was like a miracle. But you can sit 1,500 people in there, and all the effects are there. It's a stunt show. So I thought this is like, to me, it only made sense. And so that's another one that I thought was really awesome, because Bill and Ted, didn't know people were going to go crazy for that show.
No, they become a cultural phenomenon. Eh? They even bringing the movie back with the actors. It stayed on the mind of all the people. And when the show left 2 years ago, I think, the people were
I don't know why.
devastated.
I mean, it's sad to me that it left, but it had a whole following. And, Bill and Ted was topical. So whatever's going on in the world, we put in mostly what's going on in America. I mean, I'll be honest with you, not just the world, but...
For Americans, basically, the world is America.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that right now. I'm not even sure if I want to live in America anymore, to be honest with you. It's gotten really, it's crazy over here. But so it was so topical, and people would scream because they could all come out of that phone booth. I mean, you can go anywhere in time that you want to. So, whatever's, I don't even know. I don't even want to think about what we put in there that's topical right now, unless it would be the COVID virus, which I don't think would come out of but whatever pop icon was happening and whatever was big in the news. So that was in Bill and Ted. And then the end was a huge production number. So, and we would pick something from the past, again, to be a production number. So, one year we had the Brady Bunch lookalikes, and one year we did Tu Wong Fu, Julie Newmar, that big thing with the thing. And people went nuts. It was fun. It was
always scary. Recognizable.
Yeah. And everybody, I mean, the year we did OJ, God, if you even remember that, we had a guy that looked like him, and he drove in the Bronco. I thought the place was going to go nuts because he drove in, guy gets out of the car, and everybody just screams. So everything that you liked was in there. The DeLorean was thrown in there. First 2 years we had horses in there because it was the West show, so we used their animals. But yeah, I think Bill and Ted is one of my favorite things ever that still I will always remember. And I had no clue when we first did it, the first show that we did. I thought, I don't know if they're going to love it or hate it. I did not know. And everybody was like, they loved it and stood up. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. So, and I'm the one, again, not to talk about me, but I'm the one that names characters.
Yeah, because that's one of the things I read. You introduced the term scare actors and the ghoul school too.
Yeah, I did. And we had I have the footage of that. That was like a media event we did. And it was picked up by a lot of, we went to the Today Show, we went to, because Ghoul School was different. So media outlets would pick it up throughout the United States. But yeah, Ghoul School was totally fun. But this is how it came about. If you want to know, we had different categories of how you're paid. Okay. And so if you're somebody, if the rat lady gets one price range, because she's like a stunt woman, the stunt people get more. And then the general ones that are rolling around the studio, those actors, I just literally one day on a spreadsheet wrote scare actors. And that was it. That then it stuck forever. And I was like, and the chainsaw drill team, those are my boys too. It's just one, you put in one thing in a Halloween Horror Nights and it stays and it stays and it stays. And the one year I went, they had a female chainsaw drill team. And I'm like, no, you don't put a female. Stop. It's these handsome, hunky guys that are going down. So, a lot of that stuff is still there. And it's like, you can't even imagine. My brain can't comprehend that they're still using this stuff 30 years later.
Okay, and to wrap up this great interview, do you have one more story, one funny thing you still remember of the days you worked over there?
Well, the funniest story is, you know who Robosaurus is, right?
The Robosaurus, yeah.
Yeah, I dated Robosaurus. No one knows this, but so we got all these cars. You have to have, Robo eats cars and picks them up. So
because that thing was like in meters, it was like 20 meters high.
He's as high as a building, over there. He's higher than the New York facade. So, and he comes on a big flatbed. He's like a transformer. So he could only go in one place because we couldn't get him through the gate anyplace else. So Robo's out there and everybody's excited, and he picks up a car, and the car's on fire, which you're not supposed to do. The car's not supposed to have gas. He drops into the street. Now the street's on fire. Literally, the street's on fire. I see this cloud of smoke. I thought the Russians had bombed Florida. I didn't know. Well, the street's on fire, and everybody thinks it's part of the show. And they're clapping, and their wives. We had to call 911, which is emergency. And we had to bring in the Orlando Fire Department.
And all people thought it was part of the event.
Oh, my God. And so they came in from another gate. Oh, my God. They sent the entire universe in. And the people thought it was part of the show. So I'm thinking, we've set the street on fire. We got the Orlando Fire Department here. How do you top this? I mean, I'll never forget as long as I live. And they're standing there while we have asphalt on fire. It's fire.
It got the event on fire for 30 years.
Yeah.
It was just, and there was always something like that going on, though. A big snafu of some sort. But Robo, I'll never forget. And I'm standing there with my boss. And he said, how are you going to top this? I said, I can't, Michael. That's one of my favorites. And the crowd just, oh, my God. They're like, we want to come back tomorrow. I said, what this?
You had to put the streets on fire every day now because people are expecting it, part of the show.
We could have killed somebody. And this car is on fire, which means there's gas in the car. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to hell on this one. But I'm still here.
Oh, well, great story. Great story. Well, Julie, first of all, thank you so much for this interview. We had a lot of fun. Do you still have anything to?
No, just if our followers want to follow you online or want to see you or see your stories, is there somewhere they can follow you? They can find you?
Well, I'm on Facebook and on Instagram, so
we will share the links in the show notes. Oh.
Yeah, you can just look me up. Julie Zimmerman on Facebook, and I can't remember what the one is on Instagram. I could send it to you.
I thought it was HHN Queen or something like that. So the Halloween Horror Nights Queen.
HHN Queen on Instagram. You're absolutely HHN Queen on Instagram. And then Facebook, I'm just myself. So that's pretty easy. They can just request or wherever they want to. I'd love to. And I do meet people, honest to God, because I had no idea that many people were in love with this event. So I'm always happy to meet with them. And again, if the group wants to come over when we don't have a pandemic plague, I'd love to meet you all from the Netherlands. We will come over. You'd be my guest.
Yes, that's one thing on our list. If we ever get to Florida again after the pandemic, we want to have a cup of coffee with you in person.
Hopefully next year. Hopefully Jesus is over by then.
Hopefully.
Well, Julie, thank you so much for being with us today. En we hope to talk to you soon. En dat was ons interview met Julie.
Ja, wat een legende.
Ja, het was een leuk gesprek.
Ja, absoluut.
Leuk dat ze ook de tijd voor ons heeft genomen.
Ja, dat vind ik sowieso leuk met al die mensen van Universal die toch even tijd maken in hun agenda voor ons.
En we hebben al een aardige agenda staan, want we moeten bij Chick op de koffie, bij deze dame op de koffie. Gaan we ooit het park nog kunnen bezoeken?
Ik hoop het inderdaad.
Het zou leuk zijn als we met haar een keer Halloween Horror Nights kunnen bezoeken.
Ja, dat lijkt me heel gaaf.
Met de bedenkster.
Ja.
Dit was weer een hele leuke aflevering. Waar kunnen mensen ons volgen?
Ja, als je natuurlijk op de hoogte wil blijven van alles. En we zullen ook inderdaad de links naar de website en de Facebook, de Instagram van Julie daar delen. Vind je allemaal op @upperlotpodcast op alle bekende social media handles.
Ja, en heb je nog een vraag voor ons, kan je die altijd stellen naar info@upperlotpodcast.nl. Ik wil je bedanken voor deze show en alle luisteraars. Tot de volgende keer.